We got a bit of a situation here. So, trying to replace the crankshaft position sensor. The sensor actually broke off in the timing cover. The guy tried to get it out. He couldn't get it out, so he called me. I tried to fish it out. I tried everything. I tried drilling it. I tried putting a screw in it. I tried everything. While I was trying to get it out, it pushed down into the timing cover and went inside the engine. So now we got to take the timing cover off to get this thing out. I'm hoping that I can just take the timing cover off and not have to remove the oil pan and everything too, because this is a four-wheel drive Chevy truck and I'm not really trying to do all that, but if we have to, we will. But fingers crossed. You guys keep me in your prayers. Hopefully we can just get this done without taking the entire bottom half of the engine apart. We'll see how this goes. First up, we got to take the water pump off. So there's 6 bolts holding this thing in. There's 3 on the right and 3 on the left, and then there's 3 hoses on the passenger side of this water pump. One of them goes to the radiator and the other 2 go to the heater core. Once all that's removed, this water pump can come right out. The belt going to the AC compressor is a one-use stretch fit belt, so we can go ahead and cut that off, and then we can work on taking this crank pulley out. I'm starting off by trying to remove the crank bolt with my battery-powered impact gun. It doesn't seem to have enough juice, so I'm going to try this breaker bar. Now the engine's just turning over, so there's not enough tension on the engine to hold it still. So I'm going to try my big corded impact gun. It can barely fit in here with the radiator still in here, but I'm going to try it anyway. No dice, so I'm going to have to get creative. So my solution is to take a pry bar, wedge it between the engine and the crank pulley, and then put the handle of the pry bar on the battery tray right there. Now I got to climb all the way up in this thing. And I'm using a jack handle as a cheater bar here to give me some extra leverage because this thing is on tight. Now that I broke that bolt free, I can use my big corded impact gun to get it the rest of the way out. Now that I got the crank bolt out of the way, I'm just going to back it out a little bit but still leave it in the crankshaft. And then I'm going to put my 3-jaw puller on here. It's really important not to use an impact on these things, and the main reason I say that is because my impact wouldn't fit without taking out the radiator. And I'm really not trying to do all that right now. I'm really trying to keep this process simple, so I'm going to have to use my breaker bar here and just do a million tiny little turns.
2 hours later.
That crank pulley can just live on the ground for now. That's where I was going to put it anyway. Let's see if I can take a shortcut here. This is the VVT Magnet. I'm going to take this out and see if maybe that camshaft sensor is accessible right here. Maybe I can just completely skip taking off this timing cover, and it would be a really, really good day if I can. I'm really hopeful about this. I think it's going to be right here, accessible, and this is going to cut a lot of time out of my day, and I'm going to be able to get home early tonight.
Got him! Got him!
All right, well, so much for that. We'll just have to take this timing cover off. So for that, there's 2 bolts on the bottom going through the oil pan into the timing cover, so I'm going to take those off first. Then there's 8 bolts going into the timing cover, into the engine block, around the front of the timing cover. Most of these I can just get with my impact, but this last one right here behind the AC compressor, I'm actually going to have to use a small little swivel socket. These are all 10mm bolts, by the way. And this is really the make or break moment here. This is going to be the difference between me calling my wife and telling her I'm going to be home in time for dinner, or me calling her and telling her don't wait up.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Finally, my first bit of good news on this project. And it's actually held in here between the cam phaser and the timing chain itself. So all I got to do is just put the crank pulley back in the crankshaft, and then I can rotate the engine around until the tension comes off of this little portion of the sensor, and then it'll just fall right in my hands. I just got to be careful not to drop it down in the oil pan, or it's going to undo all the progress that we've made so far. Sorry for the grunting sounds here. I'm laying over the top of the radiator cover, so my chest is kind of compressed. It's kind of hard to breathe. But anyway, we got this sensor out. Thank goodness. All this over that tiny little piece of plastic. If you leave this in the engine, it will ruin your engine. All right, so we got the timing cover here, and we got a new timing cover gasket set. So I took the old gasket off. It was stuck on the engine. I took it off, and so I'm going to be cleaning this up a little bit and putting in the new, crankshaft seal. We got a new cam sensor magnet that goes right here. We got a new one of those to replace it with, and I'm going to clean this whole cover up. Now, since we didn't take the oil pan off, we're not replacing the oil pan gasket. Even if we did, so this is the bottom of the timing cover here, and where the bottom of the timing cover and the engine block meet, when you replace that oil pan gasket, you got to put a little dollop of Permatex on these seams right here. So it's going to have a little bit of Permatex there anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this whole surface up. I'm going to clean the gasket that's on the front of that oil pan, and I'm going to run a little seam of RTV gasket maker all the way across the bottom of this thing. And that should, if that oil pan gasket decides it wants to leak, it has that gasket maker there that should help clog up any leaks or anything like that. Should keep it from leaking. I've done it in the past and it's worked fine. So that's what we're going to do. We got really, really lucky with not having to remove this oil pan. So we're going to try to keep it that way. We're going to do everything to the best of our abilities, make sure it doesn't leak or anything so that we don't have to do any of this again. Now, most of the reassembly process is just the reverse of the disassembly process, but there are two steps that are pretty important that I want to show you that are a little bit different than the disassembly. So let's go ahead and get into those. And then after that, we can see if this truck actually runs. These crankshaft pulleys are more or less press fit on here, so there's no key or anything like that, which means that it's kind of hard to squeeze them back on the crankshaft. So there's a couple of tools you can get. What I'm using here is just a block of metal. This is a slide off a slide hammer set that I have. And I just put it on the crank pulley and I'm kind of tapping it with a hammer to get it in there. You don't want to start tightening this thing down with a crank bolt until you can get 3 or 4 full threads on it, because if you do, it's going to put so much tension on that bolt, it's either going to pull the threads out of the crankshaft or off the bolt, and then you're going to be in a whole world of hurt. So even now, I am using my impact gun, which is not preferred, but it's what I have to do at this moment, and it's working. If you do that this way, make sure that you remove the bolt a few times to kind of check on the threads and make sure they're not stretching or getting damaged or anything. Like I said earlier, this stretch fit belt is a one-time use belt, so we're going to install a new one real quick. The easiest way to do this that I found is by just using the zip tie trick. And what I do, I typically just run 2 rows of zip ties around the crank pulley and over the stretch fit belt. That way it holds it in place while I'm trying to put it on. They do make a couple of tools to do this. I've tried to use them before. They never really work for me, so I just use it this way. It saves me a lot of time, and I can actually get the belt on here. And then you just take the belt, and with one hand you hold it onto the AC compressor, and with the other hand you turn the engine over to try to get that belt all the way up on here. And now that it's about halfway over, it's holding tension on the engine, so I can actually finish tightening down this crank pulley bolt. And now it's finally rolling around there. And see, it just popped on the crank pulley. And now you just kind of work it back and forth, going back and forth. You keep pushing that belt further and further on there. This is a ribbed belt, so you got to go over a couple of ridges. But just keep working it back and forth, push it a little bit further onto the air compressor, push a little bit onto the crank pulley, and then keep going all the way around. Once you rotate that crankshaft pulley all the way around, these zip ties will just pop off. That's what makes this process so easy, is that you just put them on, rotate it around, and they pop right off. You don't have to cut or anything like that. All right, so here's the moment of truth. We got everything put back together, got everything torqued down, got the coolant put back in the engine. So I'm going to go turn the key real quick and see what happens. All right, this thing's beeping like crazy. What the heck? All right, the guy told me that this might happen. He said this is what it was doing before. It would turn over a couple of times without firing, and that's why I was replacing this camshaft position sensor. So unfortunately, it seems as though that may not have fixed the issue. I'm going to plug my scanner up to it and see if it gives me any codes. Started looking at fuses. I feel like a rotisserie chicken out here. The fuel pump fuse was completely fried. So there's some scorch marks on the fuse box too. There's some scorch marks on one of the other fuses. I replaced it as well. It was for the ABS module. So hopefully this fixes his issue and he doesn't have any more. But if he does have more issues like this, we may need to either look at replacing the fuel pump or replacing the fuse box itself. Not sure if that was his original issue or not. We did not diagnose his truck or start the job or anything. He called us out here to kind of give him a hand on getting this crank sensor or camshaft sensor replaced. So that's what we did. So replacing that fuse did actually fix the problem. The truck's running now. He did say that it has been months or even a year since the truck has started this well. Like I said, I'm not sure what came first, the fuse or the camshaft sensor, or if the camshaft sensor was even bad. But from doing research on these trucks, I can see that this is a pretty common issue with these cam sensors. So I'm assuming that it was bad and that's what caused the fuse to scorch. It's been about a week since we did that repair and we still haven't heard from the customer to say like, hey, anything's wrong. So I think it's safe to assume that everything is good to go and this thing is running like it's supposed to. What you're about to see on your screen are two videos that I really think you're going to enjoy next. So click on one of those and thanks for watching, guys. Time to spin the cooling fan on. That might not make it into the video. Depends on if it looked funny or stupid.